copy of the logs that I will present today is in the joint custody of COMELEC and Smartmatic. Let me proceed with the first issue, Mr. President. As per COMELEC and Bank Resolution 10083, the Board of Canvassers shall only convene starting 3 p.m. of May 9, 2016. Now we are presenting here through our slide, as you can see, a transmission activity was captured as early as May 8, 2016, one day before the election, the voting. The transmission is being done by IP address 10.11.5.5, transmitting to 0507.ccs.pili2016pinas.net, as seen in the logs of server CNTADNSO1, which I showed earlier. Now, who is 10.11 or 10.11.5.5 that is transmitting data from May 8? Pakibalik mo nga yan. May 8 of, what time is that? 9 in the morning. 9:17 in the morning of May 8, nag-transmit na ng 4 na beses. May, still the same, after 3 minutes, transmit ulit ng 4 na beses, another 4 transmissions after a few minutes. So who is this 10.11.5.5? 10.11.5.5 is an IP address of a clustered vote counting machine, or VCM, or precinct count optical scan, PICOS, as we know. On the receiving end, who is 0507.ccs.pili2016pinas.net. As you can see in the slide, the transmission code is pointing to the consolidated canvassing system of the municipality of Libon, Albay. This is merely an example, Mr. President. This is one of the many transmissions that were conducted from May 8. The early transmission activity continued until May 9, 2016 in the morning, prior to the official conduct of the elections. In this slide, one can see that 5801.ccs.pili2016pinas is the CCS of the municipality of Angono, Rizal. These early transmissions were seen in the logs of the first, the server from COMELEC and Smartmatic, server CNTADNSO1 server. This is the domain name service server 1, which is the main DNS used by all vote counting machines and consolidated canvassing system. In this simple illustration, Mr. President, there, one can see the process of transmittal of votes. Each level of transmittal can be traced using the domain name service DNS logs. From the PICOS machines, the election returns are transmitted to the central server, to a transparency server, and the Municipal Board of Canvassers. From the Municipal Board of Canvassers, the results are transmitted to the Provincial Board of Canvassers, PBOC, where the results are collated and then transmitted to the National Board of Canvassers, NBOC, where the results of national positions are canvassed. The MBOC and the PBOC also separately beam election returns to the central server. In summary, Mr. President, there has been an alleged early transmission of votes of certain VCMs to the Municipal Board of Canvassers. These are only examples of the numerous early transmissions to different municipal and provincial board of canvassers in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The standard answer, Mr. President, of Smartmatic would be that these transmissions are only testing transmissions. These transmissions, Mr. President, cannot be in any way claimed as testing transmissions. Because as far as I can remember, the last official testing was made on April 23, 2016. Testing transmission ka 1 day before election and all the way until election day. Mr. President, let me go to the second issue. The second issue of foreign access in our election servers. These were series of access before, during, and after the elections. What I'm showing you now is only a snippet of May 9 secure logs. The timestamps indicate that the accessing is being done precisely every minute. And this is only possible and can only be done by machines. In the slide, very accurately per minute. In the slide, one can see username E360 Sync. This is the accessing. The E360 Sync is accessing the CNTB NDS server, yung pangalawang server na in-explain ko, with root access privilege, which means it can open, copy, and transmit information gathered. Again, CNTB DNS is the server used by the Q servers from May 10 to May 11. One day prior to election, this username, and it is proven in the log, it is not merely a claim. This username made a malicious activity that is categorized as a critical intrusion to a computer system. If you do this in your own home computer, your firewall or antivirus will alert you. So the question now is, who is username E360? Apparently, E360 is a server in Amazon AWS.com, which is a cloud computing service located mainly in the United States. To dig deeper, Mr. President, the username E360 looks very similar to a software product of the Philippine election provider Smartmatic. To conclude the second issue, Mr. President, our election servers are allegedly accessed remotely, and information gathered were copied and submitted to a server in the Amazon cloud services in the United States. The question that is next to be asked, Mr. President, is what are the contents of these transmissions? My source, who has great love for this country, I suppose, has seen and knows the contents of these transmissions. I am not willing to divulge the contents as he has given it to me unless there is direct evidence that is presented. So perhaps in the continuing investigation or the proper investigation that will be conducted, we will have the hard evidence. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I urge this august body to consider the facts presented today and conduct the proper investigation. It is high time that the proper Senate committee investigates the automated election system and subpoena COMELEC and Smartmatic to provide the relevant data as regards these allegations. Pag pinilisinta nila yung mga DNS na to, lilitaw lahat yung makikita natin. These issues cannot be ignored, Mr. President, as it weakens the propriety of our automated election system. We must ascertain the accuracy of these allegations as to either make the responsible officials accountable or finally put to rest the questions clouding the results of the 2016 elections. In any case, I believe that the outcome of any investigation on this matter will surely lead to a more accurate and transparent system and results for the coming 2019 elections. I pray. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Lacson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman from Nueva Ecija and Quezon City yield to some clarificatory questions?
Yes, willing, and Cebu, Mr. President.
And Cebu.
Oh, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is quite a revelation you just made in your privilege speech. And I join our colleagues in congratulating you for sharing with us this vital information that may be useful in future elections, not only in the May 2019 election, national elections, but in future elections. My question is, kasi medyo nabitin kami, Mr. President, meron po bang mga nakinabang at nawalan dito sa inyong nilahad sa inyong privilege speech? Hindi naman kailangan sabihin kung sino-sino kasi kanina medyo nag-uusap kami ng aking seatmate kasi kandidato pagka-presidente at ako naman kandidato noon pagka-senador. Medyo nagtatanungan kami kung meron bang sa ating nawalan? Meron ba ritong nakinabang? Si Senator Grace po ba ay nawalan ng boto noong May 2016?
Yung nakinabang,
Ako po ba ay nakinabang?
Yung nakinabang, perhaps, Mr. President, if the subpoenaed logs will be presented by COMELEC and Smartmatic, malalaman natin kung sino yung mga nakinabang. I do not want to rely on what was just given to me as hearsay. Now, dun sa mga hindi nakinabang na susunod na tanong mo, tiyak na marami. Like Senator Poe and Senator Lacson, madami kayong na-zero. Dito sa mga transmission na to, zero kayo.
Ilang presinto po kami na-zero na pwede po malaman ba? Hindi ko na alamin kung anong presinto, pero ilang presinto po ba kami na-zero base doon sa inyong nalalaman?
I do not have the... I'm very sorry.
At kanino po ba napunta yung aming boto? Kay Joel Villanueva po ba?
Napakarami po na zero. Ikinalulungkot kong ibalita na hindi lang si Grace po at saka si Senator Lacson na zero. Ako din, marami zero. 819. Ito. Doon tayo sa zero. Senator Ping Lacson, PANFILO Lacson, 819. Zero ka.
Zero.
Si TG,
napakasakit naman po niyan, Mr. President.
Sherwin, Francis Tolentino, 816, zero. Villanueva, meron din naman. Meron din. Zubiri, 693. Marami pa eh.
Si Senator Grace po ba ilang presinto? Zero. Nahiya po siya magtanong, kaya actually yung tanong niya pinasa sa akin eh.
The best answer, the answer can be achieved, Mr. President, when we conduct the hearing. Because at this point, I will just be merely relying on some on hearsay, some on small figures that were given. I dare not come up with conjecture. This makes sure that what I presented earlier is not conjecture. These are based on facts, on hard evidence that were given and submitted, and this comes from the logs of the Smartmatic and the servers. That's why, Mr. President, my issue was pumasok na naman ng COMELEC na kontrata dito sa Smartmatic. Hindi pa nasasagot itong mga problema ito. Ito bago itong problema ito eh. Hindi ko naman alam ito eh. Ang alam ko lang, nagkakagulo sa may mga protesta, may mga ganyan. Hindi ko naman pinapansin, Mr. President eh. Pero ito, ibang klase ito. Ibang klase ito sa lahat at ang nagbigay sa akin, I guarantee you, is an impeccable source. I will not say from what company he is with because baka mag-witch hunt na rin sa kanila eh.
In the meantime, I will not belabor the issue and just wait for the proper committee to investigate, to conduct the inquiry in aid of legislation, Mr. President. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman also, Mr. President.
Okay, so ladies first. Senator Paul is recognized.
Anyway, since my seatmate already mentioned my name and dragged me on into this interpellation, I would just like to make a manifestation, Mr. President. First, I'd like to thank the good senator from Cebu, Nueva Ecija, and Quezon City for remaining vigilant. I think this is from a shared experience, not just during the last election, but in 2004 as well. We know how heartbreaking it is, not just for the candidates themselves, but for the people, for their absolute right to choose being sidetracked and being ignored. But I think I would also like to make a point here that I definitely lost the elections. I know that for sure because of the overwhelming gap in the support the president had. And I also believe that since the president did not belong to the ruling coalition at the time, he really had no means to be able to manipulate the results of the elections. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that just because there was a clear winner, the other positions that were in consideration should not be looked into, because especially when the fight is very close, I think that this is a worthy concern that we need to investigate further, not just in the ranking in the senatorial slate, but also to be able to prevent this from happening again in the future. So again, thank you to Senator Sotto for his initiative.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the record, the president, the elected president, President Rodrigo Duterte, has mentioned time and again that he knows and he has been told that he should have gotten more votes, Mr. President. He's mentioned that a number of times.
Senator Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, we'd like to congratulate our Majority Floor Leader for raising this very important issue. And I think it's about time that we really talk about this, and we'll definitely participate in the coming investigation of this particular issue. I just want to put on record, Mr. President, because during the campaign period, Senator LACSON and I would go around, and Senator LACSON would joke around and say he will give pass a vote to Joel Villanueva, and I hope, and I wanted to put on record if the majority leader is saying a while ago that there was indeed some pass a vote. If this representation was also a part of it, Mr. President, and I'd like to ask, Mr. President, because my name was mentioned about the zero votes, Mr. President. May I know if there is some truth to that, Mr. President?
Mr. President, let me clarify. Halos lahat ng kandidato magkakasiro. Hindi lahat ng lugar iboboto ka eh. Especially yung one-on-one na mga labanan. What I said na zero si Senator Lacson and zero si Senator Po is the transmissions that I talked about. Yung mga transmission na yon, sabi niya, sabi ng source ko, zero sila. Ito mga ito, sinabi niya.
Meron po bang...
That I can vouch for.
Mr. President?
Hindi dun sa entire election. Because sa entire election sa ibang lugar, I'm sure may mga presinto, may mga barangay o municipality na nasisiro tayo. Hindi nakakapagtaka yun. Hindi lahat ng tao iboboto kayo.
I agree, Mr. President.
Pero what I said earlier, and I think the question of Senator Lacson was directed to the transmissions that I placed in the slide. Doon sa mga slide na yun, according to my source, ayun na nga, maraming na zero. Maraming zero.
Including this representation?
Ilan lang ang nakinabang.
Mr. President, including this representation? Because
I am not sure, Mr. President.
Because I was given a note here, there are 804 precincts also that I got zero.
Yes, that is in the overall, Mr. President.
Thank you.
In the main transmissions, the best answer would be when we receive the DNS logs that we will subpoena, Mr. President.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. President. Now, as of now, Mr. President, the 2018 barangay elections scheduled for this May are still going to proceed. Will they make use of the same automated system, Mr.
The
President?
barangay elections, I don't think so, Mr. President.
Thank you.
It's
Mr.
manual.
As of now, Mr. President, the 2018 barangay elections scheduled for this May are still going to proceed. Will they make use of the same automated system, Mr.
The
President?
barangay elections, I don't think so, Mr. President.
Thank you.
It's
Mr.
manual.
President. Okay, Mr. President.
Which apparently, pagka ganito ang usapan, may parang mas accurate pa.
Thank you. Mr. President, now given the proximity naman of the 2019 election, senatorial elections, how would the majority floor leader propose? How would you propose to we proceed to ensure that a similar incident or discrepancy will not take place? Do we still have time, Mr. President?
Yes, I think so, Mr. President. COMELEC has just recently awarded Smartmatic again. Perhaps it may not be too late at this point, and a hearing conducted by the Senate would be able to thresh that out and find out if the timetable is still possible.
Well,
or if proper safeguards can be placed, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to put on record that this representation would gladly support and participate in the upcoming investigation. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the Majority Floor Leader.
Yes,
Senator ZUBIRI.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Would the Honorable Majority Floor Leader just accept a few questions from this representation?
certainly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at least just to premise my question, in 2013, when I ran, I remember very clearly that midnight of the day of the elections, nandun po kami sa headquarters. It was in W Hotel sa Cross Boulevard. And I recall clearly that there was a panic that ensued in the COMELEC because the number of votes that were being counted were more than those who voted. So they had to send somebody in to reboot the system. They sent someone in the master server to reboot the system. And pagkatapos doon naalala ko, hindi na po ako gumalaw. From number 14, the next 2 days I stayed number 14, Mr. President, even with votes coming in from Mindanao. But what can we do, Mr. President? I was member of the minority. I was a civilian at the time. I was in no position of government. So we just decided to fade away in the background. In 2016, the same situation happened again. They rebooted. That is a factual incident. They had to reboot the system again. I'd like to ask the Majority Floor Leader, do you think this is proper, or that they come in the middle of the election count and reboot their system? you think that is a proper method of counting or of this system?
Certainly not, Mr. President. As I said earlier, there are many issues revolving around the Smartmatic, and therefore I am really surprised, and problematic is the word that I used, that when I found out that COMELEC has unanimously voted to again give the option to purchase the Smartmatic's voting counting machines. Hindi pa nga nare-resolve ito mga ito, katulad yung minasabi ngayon ni Senator ZUBIRI, Mr. President.
And is it true, Mr. President, that part of the documentation found, which is going to be part of the investigation of Senator Chis Escudero, is that some of the documentation found, when I read it in the newspapers, that the former COMELEC chief had dealings with the lawyers of Smartmatic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I read the same information, Mr. President. Whether it's true or not, I cannot vouch for it, Mr. President.
So my question would probably be, we'll wait for the investigation of Senator Chis, but will we still have time to correct the awarding of the contract to Smartmatic? Because I'm with you, but to the Majority Floor Leader, I am with you to stop the awarding of the election paraphernalia as well as the counting machines to Smartmatic, because there have been several elections already wherein they have not answered satisfactorily the questions of electoral fraud in these areas. So, is there still time, Your Honor?
Mr. President, we have to find time to stop it if it is not resolved. And that is why the proper committee in the Senate should convene right away and subpoena these logs that I mentioned, Mr. President.
Maybe, Mr. President, we can also ask the chair of the Committee on Finance on that will need budget allocation, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they can use their savings to pay for this. They'll need budget allocation.
Oh, yes, for the 2019 elections.
So therefore, it should be a colotilla that the budget that we'll give to them will not be, should not be utilized for this outdated. And I'd say outdated because I believe that those who can hack into it already know the system, Mr. President. And if I'm not mistaken, to the Honorable Majority Floor Leader, the logs that he was showing were in zero ang mga senador. Mr. President, there is a possibility that masiro kami. Correct yan. In the realm of possibilities, tama yun. But the probability is very, very high na kunyari masiro si Joel Villanueva, masiro si Sherwin Gatchalian, or masiro si Tito Sotto. Can you imagine? Senator Tito Sotto, zero? I doubt it very much, Mr. President. Therefore, there might be a manipulation to get all his votes and to pass it on to someone else, because technically you have to do that to be able to credit it to someone else. Am I mistaken, Mr. President, Your Honor? Is that the procedure? Tatanggalin nila yung boto ng isang senador para ipasa sa isa dahil kailangan magtugma yung number of voters for the area para hindi naman sumobra yung boto. Tama po yun.
That is correct during the time of Senator Nene Pimentel, where he was really a victim of the dagdag bawas. But because of the computerized system, I really could not give you a very positive answer. Kasi pwedeng may nadagdagan lang. At ikaw, imbis na mababasan ka, wala ka.
Kasi pwede
for example, if in these transmissions, let's say a candidate gets all the votes in that precinct and you did not get any, hindi dagbawas yun, Mr. President.
Opo, kasi kung titignan mo yung arithmetic, and I know the Senate President is a major in mathematics, ang mangyayari kasi dyan, if they shave out, let's say, 10 senators of their votes, and ibibigay doon to propel one to be number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or papasok man lang sa top 12, ibibigay lahat ng votes na yan sa isang kandidato na yan. Kasi kung binigay mo sa kanya yan without shaving the senators, the other senators, so sobra yung boto niya sa total count. Kaya yun po nangyayari dun. But nevertheless, I joined the majority floor leader. This has been in my mind for the last 4 years. Ako ba'y natalo sa 2013? O ako ba'y dinaya? Or what? This 2016, tayo ba ay dinaya din? O nabigyan yung boto natin sa ibang tao? Gusto po natin malaman ito. Although we are recipients of the 2016 elections, we want to make sure that our win here is beyond reproach for the 2019 and the 2022. Kaya I agree with the majority floor leader, Mr. President. We should urge the COMELEC to suspend the implementation of that particular order to utilize Smartmatic and review the documents given to Senator Tito Sotto for further study and investigation. And if it is true that the manipulation is being done during the elections utilizing the Smartmatic, we should ban Smartmatic as it has been banned in many other countries already, Mr. President.
Yes, they have been banned in other countries. And allegations of fraud. Anyway, yes, thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
President. I thank you for your
Allow me to
support.
contribute to the mathematical question of Senator Zubiri. In a one-on-one election, when you subtract from someone, when you add to someone, you must subtract from somebody else. Otherwise, the total number of votes of the candidates will exceed the number of voters. In a multi-seat election, you just have to make sure that the total number of votes of the candidates do not exceed 12 times the number of voters. Plus, the second ceiling would be the total number of voters. That should not be exceeded. So, those are the numbers or the principles that the manipulators must observe. And you forgot to mention in 2010, when we first had our first automated election, Smartmatic also misreported the total number of voters. They reported 248 million voters during the congressional canvass. So these inaccuracies, I'll just use the word inaccuracies, have been going on for
8 years already.
Since the beginning. And if COMELEC since COMELEC has chosen Smartmatic again to manage our 2019 elections, that means that all of our automated elections have been under the management of Smartmatic. All, since 2010.
Yes, Mr. President.
That is now that's now the fact. Now, okay, Senator Pacquiao wants to... Senator Pacquiao.
Thank you, Mr. President. If my colleague willing to ask, yelling some question, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Willingly.
Mr. President, mayroon po akong nalalaman ng konti last election dahil ito pong issue na to lumabas na rin. Gusto ko lang pong linawin dahil for how many years yung mga kamag-anak ko bumuboto and then every election and then last election hindi sila nakaboto dahil wala yung pangalan nila. Nawala din. But I just want to ask, Mr. President, if according to your source, who are these parties na nakinabang sa may sino, binanggit pa niya kung sino mga party ang nakinabang dito sa alleged na illegal transmitted to the COMELEC. Gusto po natin malaman kung sino
Early transmissions, Mr. President.
early transmission.
You know, I really would want to answer your question, but it will be based on hearsay, Mr. President, and I do not want to do that. I would rather that the data speak for itself when we open the DNS logs of these early transmissions, Mr. President. That will be the best answer to the question of Senator Pacquiao. It grieves my heart to not be able to give in to your request, Mr. President. Kasi kwento eh. Mahirap po yung kwento.
Thank you, Mr. President. And may I know, President, how many votes are involved with this early transmission?
I cannot give you the exact figure, Mr. President. What I can give you is that it started at 8 a.m. 9 a.m. 9 a.m. of May 8 all the way to May 9. At 9 a.m. of May 9, they were still transmitting per minute.
What I'm talking about, Mr. President, is are we talking about 100,000, 100 or millions of votes, Mr. President?
I will be talking off my hat if I give an answer, Mr. President. I really don't know.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do respect Mr. President, and also, Mr. President, may I know if do you have an idea or suggestion to prevent this issue pagdating sa mga masusunod na mga election, Mr. President? Anong gagawin natin para mahinto ito at hindi?
Well, there are two things we can do right away. First, stop the contract of Smartmatic. Do not use them ever again. Or the second one is a full-blown hearing and investigation to unearth everything, Mr. President, and the officials who are behind these alleged irregularities.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I just want to manifest, Mr. President, my full support to the investigation regarding Smartmatic issues, and I'm with you in pursuing what is right. Alam naman natin kung ano ang pinaglalaban natin, yung tama, katotohanan para sa taong bayan. So 100% Mr. President, support ako sa pag-imbestiga nito kung sinong may kasalanan o sinong gumawa ng anomalya na to.
Majority Leader, with your permission, just a few questions.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Is the essence of your speech that there was an early transmissions and then there was remote access to the server?
Also, yes, that's another issue.
Only these two, but not that there was vote padding, vote shaving?
No.
Not yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet there?
No.
Okay. So at least that's very clear that the speech was about
early transmissions containing names of candidates.
Okay. And
Votes being counted already by counting machines nang hindi pa bukas ang presinto.
that's correct, yes sir. And then foreign, yung isa foreign access pa.
Foreign intervention
Foreign
access.
pa. Okay.
Oo.
Apo. So, well, in the Senate, we have our standing committee on electoral reforms and people's participation. But we also have, by law, this joint congressional oversight committee specifically on the automated election system. So, when you said that this should be investigated by the proper committee, which committee did you have in mind, Majority Leader?
I was thinking of the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation. I would like to move later on that my speech be referred to that committee.
Why not
if the Congressional Oversight Committee is interested in, the Congress is interested in investigating this also, then we can perhaps ask that the Congressional Oversight Committee be convened.
Because the JCOC is specifically about the automated election system, and the two points that you raised in your speech are features of an automated election system. So, and then that committee has been reorganized and it has been holding hearings actually, and there's one scheduled next week, as relayed to me by Chairman Senator Escudero. What do you think, Your Honor?
Well, my older friend, the Minority Leader, reminded me that we cannot refer my speech to the Joint Oversight Committee, Mr. President, but we can refer it to the Committee on Electoral Reforms instead. And if the Joint Congressional Committee would like to conduct their own investigation on the matter, then they can do so without necessarily a referral from
Yes, okay.
Ms. Ed, Mr. President.
So it depends on the initiative of the chairman
Yes, sir.
of our panel. Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much, sir.
With that, Mr. President, I thank you for your support and our colleagues, and I move to refer my privileged speech to the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, including the interpellations thereafter.
Is there any objection to the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved.